And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the other three lights that we have not used yet, which is the point, the spot, and the rect light. I like using the example of a car, so we're going to do a car first. And the reason why I like to use a car is because the car uses actually all three different types of lights in one thing, and then that way I can kind of throw them all into one lesson, and we get a chance to see what all of them do. Just to give you a really big, just sort of exactly what these are, the point light is more or less like, think of like a light bulb. So a light bulb you turn on and it sort of goes out in all directions, right? So it's omnidirectional. Wherever you place the light, in where the center of that bubble is going to be the brightest, and as it goes out, it's going to lose light energy or lose brightness, depending on the size of the circle and the parameters that you put into that we'll take a look at here in just a minute. From there, the spotlight is the easiest way to think about that would be more or less like a flashlight. So if you have a flashlight, the bulb is actually inside of a tube, and the effect that you get is a tunnel of light, as opposed to what a light bulb does, which is sort of illuminate the rest of the room, right? So a spotlight is going to be just that. It's going to be a light that when you look at it, is going to point forward, and from there you'll be able to control certain aspects of the beam that'll make the light look more or less realistic in that situation. For whatever you're trying to apply it for. And the last light is going to be what's called the rect light. For me, that means rectangular light. And when you look at the light, you'll be able to see that there is a way to be able. It's basically a box. So the surface of the light, instead of being a point or a beam, is actually the whole plane. So the plane itself actually creates the light and illuminates the light from there. And then there are like sides, almost like you're putting the light inside of a box. If you can imagine, like everybody's been to an office and you look up and you see the tube lighting that's up there. That's basically lighting that's in a box, and so it creates a certain effect on the floor. There's other situations that we'll see when we do the car that we'll need to use the rec light for. Now, the other thing that I also use the rec light for is for walls. So if you have like lights that are up against walls, we'll see that later when we get into lighting the house. But right now, let's look at each one of these, and what I'm going to do real quick is I have it in the unlit view just to show you how many lights I'm actually using. There's actually two lights here. So there's a spotlight and a point light for the front. This light right here is a rect light. Let's see if I can click right on the light. Okay, so you can see that, let me slow down. Okay, so you can see that it does have a rectangular, sort of looks like anybody who's been to a pool hall or whatever, right? That's sort of like that shape of those lights. And then from there, we also have a couple of point lights on the back for the red. And we've actually been able to change the color so that way it matches what we have there with the car. And then the other light that I'm not so super thrilled about is this little light right here, which is sort of like a brake light. I don't really like the way it turned out. I think it's a little small for what we're doing, but it's there. So let's take a look and see what this looks like when we push play and actually go into the world environment and see what it looks like. So we're going to walk up to the car, and we're going to look at the beam that it's created. All right. From there, we can look at the lights themselves. That looks pretty good. There's the inside light illuminating the car. That looks fairly realistic. Doesn't look like any lights leaking out of the top. It looks like it's all inside. Looks about the right brightness. Okay, our brake lights, pretty bright, but not pointing out, right? So notice that the front of the car has spotlights, because in a car you would need to be able to project the light forward in front of you to be able to see what you're doing. You can kind of see that little light right there, the brake light, I guess. I just don't like the fact that it's flickering, and I think that has something to do with the material that that little thing is made out of. Either I need to push that, if I push it forward, I might have to use like a really tiny rec light for that. I'm trying to use a point light and it's not working. But anyways, so the other thing that we're also seeing is that we're getting some writing down there at the bottom that says preview. So every once in a while once you start working with lights, there's going to be materials that are reflective to the light and that need to be updated. And so you'll be doing a build every once in a while to be able to do that. All right, so I actually have another car that's over here, the truck, and we're going to go ahead and use that as the model for what we're going to do similar to that truck out there, to the car that's out there. So let me go ahead and hit escape. And first thing that I'm going to do is let's go ahead and get the front lights going. So when we look at the front lights, we actually have a little reflective piece that's down there. We have this orange one, the two head, I guess they're the head beams or headlights or whatever, and then the caution or brake lights that are on the side, as long as those down there. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab a directional light, and a spotlight, and put that out on the floor. Now, once we do that, we see that we get a beam. We really can't see it right now because we're in unlit, but there we go. Now, with this, there are a couple of controls that are going to come over here on the details panel. So we'll scroll up to the top, obviously where it is, what kind of light it is. From there, we get the intensity. So these are lights that are going to be facing forward. This is one of the reasons why I put a small wall here in front of us. So let me go ahead and rotate the light 90 degrees so it's actually pointing at the wall, sort of where more or less it would be. And let's put this, I'm going to go back to unlit just so that I can see where I'm putting it in relationship to the car. Okay, so I'll go back from unlit to lit, and then I'm going to push this in as close as I can. And you'll notice that it turns on and off because when it's here, it's on the other side of the material mesh for the car. If it's here, it's just out in front. So I want to get it just out in front. If you need to, zoom in, see how close you're getting, and just make sure that you're actually getting the beam out there. Now, in relationship to the beam now, we can see that we can make the beam brighter. We can drop it down to where it's almost nothing. I think the default is 8, so we're just going to leave it there for now. Okay. From there, we can change the color. This is a front headlight, so most of the time those are a white colored light. It's rare to see them in other colors, but if you needed to, you could double click here, and actually we'll do this with the lights in the back and the orange lights. From there, the next one would be how big the circle is, or how far out the light goes. So we can see that the radius of the light, and let me get out far enough so that we can actually see this. The area that it's going to affect. So that's quite a large area. I attenuated pretty far out. So it just depends, like if it's a car, maybe that's about right. If we have the relationship of the tree, let me go back to unlit so we can see where everything is. So, that seems about right. It probably wouldn't spread out that far. So at that point, what we would do is we have an inner cone and an outer cone. So if I grab the outer cone and I squeeze it, it's going to make the inner cone smaller, obviously, because the inner cone can't flip. So the inner cone is always going to be smaller than the outer cone. So if I think about a headlight, I'm thinking, it's a pretty directional light. The beam is going out pretty far in front of it, but there's sort of like a flood effect. It's sort of like a mix between a flashlight and a regular point light. So really it's the beam in the middle that's going to have the most intensity, and that's going to be for anybody who's had a flashlight, right? Like a security flashlight, right? Like one of those big black ones. If you take the front of it and you rotate it, you're going to be able to change the stream from a flood to a pinpoint back to a flood. And that's sort of what we're able to do here with the inner and the outer core. Now from there, the next thing is the size of the object itself. So if we zoom back in, let's get back to where the car is. Okay. And let's slow down again. Okay. So the next thing is going to be the size, the source radius. So I can actually make this thing feel like a bigger light. Like right now, if I go back to lit, and let's see, we can push this forward a little bit. We'll see this more on the point light. We're not going to see that much of it right here, or the effects of it right here. Now, the other cool thing that we can do is, again, this would be closer to where the bulb itself would be. Let's see, we can maybe knock this down, source radius. That end up having an effect. No, because everything is pointing forward, so none of this stuff is really having an effect on the material or the mesh of the car. The better thing to do with this is, whoops, let's go back to unlit, is to make sure that the light itself is actually coming out of the front of the car. There we go. All right. Source length would make this a longer light. We'll see that on one of the other lights. There's more of an effect in the point and the rect light. Source softness makes the light soft as opposed to having a hard edge. You can also accomplish this with this light between the inner and the outer edge. Color temperature would allow you to be able to, if you knew what the Kelvin temperature was of the light that you wanted, you could actually type that in. So lower numbers would be orange and tungsten. This would be a white color right here, and then if you got into higher numbers, you would start getting into more ultraviolet blues. And we saw this already when we did the mask. I'm sorry, the post-processing volume. Okay, so those are the things that we're looking at with that light. Now, if we were to go into lit and look at this, it looks, looks pretty cool that the thing's there, but normally we see, light coming out of the bulb itself, and we're not actually seeing that with this. So that's why we need to use a combination of two lights. So this is where we're going to grab the point light and bring the point light and bring that in, and then we're going to make changes to this. So we're going to position it first. Again, making sure that we are more or less in the front and the center, right there, and that's good. Okay, so same thing here. Let's go to from lit to unlit, and let's zoom out a bit because this thing actually is affecting a radius pretty large. You can see that big wire dome. That's actually the light itself. So let's go out to about a 4. Okay, so that's too much area for that thing to be affecting. All right, we need to make that area smaller. So same thing, we have the brightness of the light. So we'll look at the different things that we have here. So we don't want this to be brighter than the beam going forward. So let's drop this down to about a 1. Okay, so we see that that's taken quite a bit of the intensity out. We can leave the color white because it's a forward-facing beam. From there, okay, so we've made the circle smaller. Let's maybe drop that down to about a 20. So now this light will only affect things directly in front of it like that. And now we have something that more or less looks correct, right? We have the light that's in front of the car that's actually giving us light here in this area where we would expect it to, right? If you look at a flashlight, it's not just the beam, you have the light at the flashlight too. So we had to create that, and then we have the beam coming forward. Depending on what your beam is, you can make the changes that you need to there, and now you have that. Now the only other thing that we want to do with this is obviously we need to go ahead and put the other side. So let's go ahead and go back to unlit. And let me slow everything down a bit so I don't overshoot it. Okay, so now what we need to do is just, we already have one light. We're going to hold Control to select the other light. We're going to use Alt and drag out so we get a second copy. And more or less this is in the right area, so if we just drag literally across over to the other side, and then all we have to do is line up and make sure that it's in the middle. Okay, so at this point we could push play and see what this looks like. So there's the one car and here's the truck. So now we have lights in front, and I would probably make those circles a little bit smaller. It feels like I'm getting too much on the front of those. The beam here looks a little, I mean, maybe a little softer, so there's a little bit more spread. So let's go in and fix that real quick. All right, so with these guys, the point ones, I think the radius was 20. Let's make them 5. Let's try 10. Let's try 7. Okay, and then we'll do the same one for over here. We'll do 7. That way they stay the same. And then the other thing we'll do is with the point light, let's open up the outer cone so there's a little bit more spread. And then let's make the source radius. Oh, right, that's at the source. Never mind. So not that. Let's leave it like that. Let's see what that ends up looking like. So the change we made was we made the outer cone. Let's make this an even number. So let's say 40 and 20. And let's do that for the other side as well. Okay, let's push play and see how that looks. Okay, so we got a nicer spread on the front of the car. And if I look at the front, it very much indeed looks like what I would expect the headlights to look like if I was staring at the front of a car. Okay, so this video is already starting to get a little long. We're going to cut it here, and when we come back, we'll do the 2 lights for the back, the brake lights, and the inside rec light, so that we can illuminate the inside of the truck. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed the video and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.